Welcome to the Massacre Matinee.
Welcome back to the Matinee, Kate.
Welcome back.
So, this being our hunting weekend,
Yes.
even though it doesn't sound like it, we're sitting in a tree stand right now.
Yeah.
We're actually pre-recording this one, and this one is actually hunting related.
Yes.
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 So, the main person, and my pronunciation of his name may be a little bit off, but the main person in this story is Chai Suo Vang. He is a Hmong gentleman. Before I get into anything about him or the situation that happens, I need to backstory this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In northwestern Wisconsin and like Minnesota area, there are a lot of Hmong immigrants. A lot of them came over from Laos during... A lot of stuff happened.
When you
There's
say Hmong, you mean like Mongolian?
no, it's belief.
Oh,
Hmong.
Okay. I thought
Hmong people. The H is silent.
Ah.
Hmong. In that area, there's a lot of issues between hunters, especially in the northwestern Wisconsin area. I mean, hunting's huge all the same anyway.
Right.
But especially around this particular time, this actually happened in 2004. But it was really kind of at a peak that there was issues between the hunters and the Hmong people that were in the area, because where they come from, you know, hunting is a right shared by everyone, and you shouldn't need to deal with public versus private land because the hunting land is for everyone kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so I bet a lot of it was trespassing disputes and everything like that.
Yes, a lot of it was trespassing disputes, and a lot of it was also them not wanting to listen to the laws and hunt the appropriate things in the appropriate seasons, and a lot of DNR stuff, and
Yeah.
it was a constant thing. And another thing that I do want to say before we get into everything is the surname of Vang, not sure how it's pronounced, very, very common, although they're not all related
Right.
within this. As a result of this case, another person named Cha Vang actually ended up in a not so great situation. I don't really have a way to necessarily do a full episode on his story, so I'm gonna throw this quick story in there real quick. Cha Vang, which is CHA Vang, he was a Hmong gentleman that was actually killed in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Imagine that, in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
There are more details to the case that I'm not necessarily going to go into. Offhand, I believe he was shot, stabbed several times, and then basically like stashed in the woods.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And that situation actually happened 2 years after this one, so there's some speculation that it may have caused issue, sort of thing.
Right.
So before I go into Chai Vang and his history a little bit, because I mean realistically he's not necessarily in the story quite yet, I'm going to tell you about the incident first.
Right.
So November 21st of 2004, basically peak hunting season.
For Wisconsin, yes.
Yeah. Well, in that time it may have been, because I mean things like when seasons happen do change a little bit. Sunday, November 21st, roughly 15 people were in a cabin on their 400 acres of private land that was adjacent to public hunting land.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier in the day, Chai Vang and a couple of friends and their friends' sons had gone out hunting on the public land, while these people were on their private adjacent 400 acres of land.
Right.
The two co-owners of the property were there, Harry Willers and Robert Croteau.
Something toe.
Something's toes. It's one of those like EAU.
Oh, so it could go a lot of.
So
could
it's
be Cruto.
So both of them were there, along with a couple of family members, friends. Robert's son was there with him. Terry's daughter was there with him. And what had happened was Harry was just kind of out and about.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else mostly was back in the cabin. This was such an expansive property that they had like a radio system, so everybody could be like, hey, you know, I'm going over this way.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any kind of like shooting towards each
Crossfire
other.
and everything like that,
Like,
yeah.
Doing everything very, very smart. I'd say by the book.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you learn a lot about that kind of stuff in hunter safety, and I took Wisconsin's hunter safety, so. Harry is just out and about, and he sees somebody sitting up in a deer stand that's on their private property. It was actually, I believe, Robert's son's deer stand, because like everybody had their own little area that they were going to go
Right,
to.
because you don't need...
With 400 acres, I mean, they had plenty of space to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you don't need a whole lot of space if you're sitting in a stand. I think our distance from, I'm assuming they're doing bait piles. And if they are, they only need a shooting range. I believe our stand is 42 yards from our bait pile or our feeder.
Okay.
So you generally, a lot of people use like their deer stands for both rifle and bow season.
Mm-hmm.
And 50 yards is about your max. So it's between 40 and 50 yards is usually how much space you need
Right.
for a shooting lane.
Oh, I know in Wisconsin, crossbow season can run during either bow or rifle season. Is that the same for Michigan?
For Michigan, it depends on what part you're in. So, like, if you're in the Upper Peninsula, you can't use a... Well, for Michigan, we have bow season, we have rifle season, and then we have muzzleloader season.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Wisconsin also has a muzzle.
Yep.
I believe you can bow hunt with just like a compound bow. I think you can hunt with a compound bow all the way until just the end of muzzleloader season.
Okay.
You, in the Upper Peninsula, you cannot use a crossbow during muzzleloader season.
Okay.
But you can during rifle season. If you're in the Lower Peninsula, you can use the crossbow. Michigan's really weird. It's in three different sections, and there's a part in the Lower Peninsula. It kind of crots. Like if you're looking at your hand, so it's about like right through the middle of the mitten.
Mm-hmm.
You can only use straight wall cartridges.
Okay.
So they have to be like just a cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
Because they want things that are going to lose momentum kind of fast.
Right.
Because they're in more populated areas.
Makes sense.
But the UP, it's its own thing. And
So Terry saw this guy sitting up in Robert's son's tree stand, and he radios back. He's like, hey, you know, does anybody else have permission to be out here? And Robert was like, no, like, we're at capacity. All our stands are full. Like, nobody else should be out here. And he's like, well, there's a guy sitting down here in this tree stand. Like, maybe you guys should come, like, help me out a little bit, back me up a little bit, but I'm going to tell him to leave. Now, there is some speculation that racial slurs were being thrown around, although it's not necessarily confirmed.
there probably were, though.
I'm not saying
At least
I'm not
one
saying there
person
were.
was probably saying at least one or two, but I don't think it was like a
I'm not
constant.
saying, yeah, I'm not saying they were, and I'm not saying they weren't said. But I do feel like the media really
Oh yeah, the media is
made it
going to run and be
way-
like, yeah,
way
this
too
is a
much about
racial
race
thing.
about this particular case. So I mean, like I said, there's some speculation.
Well, I mean, if like you said, they had 15 people with them.
Mm-hmm.
At least one person said one racial slur.
Oh, for sure. Now, there is a lot of this is a bit speculative, but ultimately, as I understand the situation, because it's been said a couple of different ways, ultimately, Bang came down from the tree stand, supposedly apologized. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. There's,
Right.
like I said, that's one of those
Lot of
differing
he said, she
details
said.
kind of things. And according to Terry Willer's testimony, Robert, who he calls Bob, and this as a direct quote, said, as Bob got back on the radio and asked me where he was at, I said he was heading south on the food plot right now. I radioed into the cabin that I had a tree rat and I had chased him off. Which, tree rat probably not a racial thing, probably just a, hey, there was someone sitting in my stand thing.
It's a public land kind of thing when someone kind of sees your stand and they use it for themselves kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't at any point really call that racist specifically.
I also heard people refer to squirrels as tree rats, so
Might just be a thing for that area. Now, 5 of the hunters from the cabin who had heard the first radio message were like, hey, we're gonna go down, check out, see what's going on kind of thing. And they had just showed up at the tree stand shortly after that.
sorry, I googled tree rat to see if it was a racial slur. It's an actual animal.
It's an actual animal.
Yeah, they're kind of cute. They kind of look like me if I like wear makeup at night and I don't take it off in the morning.
That is kind of cute. Anyway, so the 5 hunters from the cabin that were like, hey, we're gonna go down there and check it out and see what's going on, they had just showed up shortly after Bob had radioed back. And this is where the confrontation kind of came together, because at this point Vang's there alone and he's been confronted by a handful of hunters.
Right.
Now, according to the investigation, there was only one rifle that was down there during this time aside from Vang's. Vang had his SKS, which is a very common hunting rifle at that particular area from everything that I saw.
Yeah.
Shooting a standard 7.62 by 39, which is a very common round for that area.
Right.
For
The
hunting
round's
season.
really common. I don't know about SKS as being really common as the
for that area.
For the
Supposedly, they are a bit more common. Bob Croteau made the suggestion of taking note of Vang's hunting number, because in Wisconsin, bit like visible on your back kind of thing. And Vang in this whole situation, it had a blaze orange vest on, or jacket, and it had his tag pinned on the back. Like,
if you're on public land, you need to have private, you don't.
Yeah, on public land you have to have your DNR tag visible at all times.
Yeah, so he probably thought he was still on public.
He probably did. Regardless, he had it on the back of his jacket. Robert Croteau had made the suggestion of maybe we should write that down. So they actually wrote down his DNR license number in the dust on one of the side-by-sides, or ATVs, one of the off-road vehicles, because they had a couple of different types. They had a side-by-side that one person actually rode in the back of, standing up holding onto the bars, and then there was a couple of single and double rider ATVs, I believe.
Man, they just really pulled up on him then.
Well, that's not all what showed up at once. I believe it was just a single ATV and a single side-by-side that showed up with that group. What's not mentioned through this particular article, but is mentioned in another article that I read, is that Vang had a history, and he had already gotten himself in trouble for trespassing on private land.
Right.
And that's exactly what he was doing now. And in the state of Wisconsin, if you get caught doing it, I believe it was either 2 or 3 times, they'd just not let you hunt anymore.
Yeah, they pull your right to purchase licenses and whatnot.
Right. So, according to that article, that might have been part of what, like, sparked him in being like, fuck this. But
what a reason.
According to that article, the other reason is that they were calling him racial slurs and chink this and gook that sort of thing, and he just got fed up with it. Who knows what the real reason is? Vang later said that the way he felt is that if he didn't shoot them, they would shoot him. Which is a bizarre thing to think, but ultimately what happened is Vang had his back turned to the group. He was walking away, and he had taken the scope off of his SKS, and as he turned around, he started firing shots. Now, 4 of the 8 people that were shot in the back. It was believed that he fired somewhere around 20 rounds. Ultimately, on this day, 5 people were killed almost instantly. Not all of them died quickly, unfortunately.
I think he was breaking the laws doing that because he should not have been able to have have 20 rounds on him. I think Michigan Michigan and Wisconsin have a similar law to where you can only have 5 rounds in a mag.
I'm
for hunting.
Not sure what the rules were in that area at that time. This happened in Meteor, Wisconsin. So initially, 5 of the people that were killed right away. The 6th victim died the next day. 2 additional to that were also wounded. And it was described that the way he turned around is that he raised his rifle up to his shoulder in a smooth, continuous, sweeping motion as he circled to the right, knelt, and aimed at Terry Willers. Terry Willers was the only other person there that actually had a rifle with him, which is, I'm assuming, why he went for him first.
Mm-hmm.
Because he spun around, he aimed right for Terry and just instantly went for a shot on him. And Hessebeck, who is one of the other... I'll get to the list of victims in a minute. Hessebeck later said that Willers did fire at Vang, although later he testified saying that no one pointed a gun at or fired at Vang. And there's some inconsistencies on that. I would think that if he had fired a shot, they would have some sort of evidence of that.
Yeah, another case.
Right. So, Vang's first shot actually missed Willers as he ran and dove for cover, but he landed on top of his rifle and couldn't turn around. Like, he couldn't turn over and get to his rifle before Vang's second shot hit him in his neck. He turned towards the guys that were still on the ATVs and shot them. He shot and killed. See, there's names in here, and I don't have... So I'm gonna say the names, and then I'll later explain.
Right.
So, he shot Roy on his ATV. His ATV was still in gear, so it kind of was, like, slowly creeping forward, which in itself would be kind of horrifying to see. Everybody's like, oh shit, because there's shooting going on. He shot and killed Drew. I believe he shot Drew in the back. These are all last names. Robert and his son, the Croteaus, they were running away in fear, and he fired 3 shots at them. He shot at them towards their backs. He shot a lot of people.
Yeah.
He shot a lot of people, and he shot most of them in the back. When he killed the Croteaus, because neither of the Croteaus survived, he shot Bob's son in the back before he killed Bob. And, like, just some of the details are so heartbreaking. One of the people that died as well was Terry Willers' daughter. The whole situation is fucked, and it was their opening weekend trip. So, like, they had just gotten up there for the weekend for opening gun season. I'm gonna give you the list of victims, and then we're gonna jump back to a little bit of backstory on Vang, just to kind of explain why he reacted the way he did, and then we'll jump back forward to the trial.
Gotcha.
So, everyone that died were Robert and Joey Croteau. Bob was 42 when he was killed. He was hit center mass. He died fairly quickly. Joey was 20 when he died. He was hit 4 times in the back. Alan Lasky, who was 43, was hit 3 times, I believe also in the back. Mark Roy, he was the guy that was on the ATV that was still in gear. He was 28. He died with a single headshot. Jessica Willers, Terry's daughter, she was 27. She was hit twice in the back. And Denny Drew, he died the following day to a gut shot. He was 55. Lauren Hessebeck and Terry Willers both survived. Lauren was 48 at the time. Terry was 47 at the time, but obviously all around.
You're right.
the thing about why I feel he reacted in some of the ways he did was a lot of it was in his training. So Vang was actually born in Laos, and there's a lot of backstory that you could get into if you wanted to about how the Laotian War affected the livings of these people in there, but we're not a history podcast, we're a true crime podcast, so go find your history class somewhere else. But ultimately, he spent a lot of his childhood in a refugee camp in Thailand before him and his siblings were relocated to the U.S. in 1980. They lived in California, and when he grew up, he joined the National Guard at the age of 21. He was a naturalized citizen, so as was his right. He served from 1989 to 1995, got a sharpshooter qualification badge and a good conduct medal. He was honorably discharged from the National Guard after 6 years of service. That explains like why he went with like the down to one knee and shoot kind of thing. Yeah. He was going for accuracy clearly, but he had a history of problems. On Christmas Eve of 2001, he was living in Minneapolis, St. Paul at the time in Minnesota. The police were actually called to his house on Christmas Eve of 2001 when he wanted to go out and his wife didn't want him to. So they just started fighting and the cops were called. And his second marriage, he was married twice. Right. His second marriage ended after he nearly choked his wife to death for gambling away $3,000. Well, so he's got some history there.
He's got a couple issues, just a few,
one or two for sure. Now the thing about court cases in Wisconsin is Wisconsin has CCAP that is accessible online for you to be able to look up names and see court documents within reason. I mean, they don't show like pictures of evidence and things like that. So I went into a hell of a rabbit hole last night looking on CCAP of all of the case file information about this case. And it's not something I really want to suck you into, but it is available online if you would like some further details into this sort of stuff. But ultimately what happened was that Vang pled self-defense, that he was feeling threatened, and that's why he did some of the things that he did. He feared for his life and said that he only shot after another hunter shot nearly hit him because supposedly it was the rumor is that it's not that uncommon for them to take pot shots and like shoot like a foot away from people. Yeah. I don't believe any self-respecting hunter would do that. I could be wrong.
No, but I don't I have a problem with the whole self-defense thing. In self-defense you don't shoot people who are running away from you.
Exactly.
Multiple times.
Exactly. So he told him, he's like, I began fearing for my life. I only shot because somebody else almost shot me. And he told the jurors that they each approached him and he responded by shooting at each one. And he said that he shot two of them in the back because they were disrespectful. When asked if Bob Croteau deserved to die while on the stand, he actually said yes. Just outright that, yeah, he deserved it because he was being disrespectful.
Yeah, he threw his whole fucking case away with that. Wow.
Now, the one thing that I'm going to pop over to this other article, and this article is actually from Sydney, Australia.
Yeah?
Yeah, Australia. His account, Chavang's account of the shootings released today, which would have been November 25th of 2004, describes a wild scene in the Wisconsin woods, in which he fired back, shooting and killing the others, reversing his coat from blaze orange to camouflage and reloading his weapon. At one point, he said he stalked one of the unarmed men and shot him in the back as he fled screaming for help. Screaming for help was actually Joey. That was something that I found in another article. When he found one of the victims still standing after he had fired several shots, Vang said that he yelled, "You're not dead yet," and fired at him again.
Yeah, fuck this dude. Yeah.
The other quick thing that I wanted to bring up before I get into what his charges are and all of that is in the Wisconsin Circuit Court records, you can see every single little motion and like how they resulted and things like that. And one of the motions that they had was to sequester the jury because he couldn't stop talking to reporters. They actually had to court order him to stop writing letters to the newspapers and stop calling reporters.
Wow.
Yeah, that's in the court records. Like, that's the only way I found out that that was a thing, was reading through the court records. So ultimately,
Homeboy had his little 15 game.
yeah. Ultimately, just under a year later, on September 16th of 2005, Chai Suo-Vang was found guilty of all 6 charges of first-degree intentional homicide, as well as 3 charges of attempted homicide. His public defender said that he was facing verbal abuse and racism, and that's why he reacted the way he did. And his public defender also said that he would have gotten a different outcome in this trial if the jury had not been predominantly Caucasian. I do find some issue with this because there was a couple of motions that were filed, including one that was approved to move the venue of the trial so it wasn't in such a
White neighborhood.
Right. And they did agree to move the location of the trial. And after all of this, he did actually request to be moved to a different prison altogether. But on November 8th of 2005, he was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms plus 70 years, 40 for 2 counts of attempted homicide, as well as 5 more years each for each count of homicide in the first degree. So he basically got life without parole because Wisconsin at the time did not have the death penalty, or he would have been at the top of the fucking list because, I mean, come on, it's Wisconsin and
Was this like the Rice Lake area?
I believe so.
Because it's Minneapolis, that's why.
Yeah, I believe so. It was not too far from Rice Lake. I believe it was just a little bit east of Rice Lake. But the nearest quote unquote town was called Meteor.
Yeah.
Is called Meteor, and it's a really sparsely populated area that's mostly just people's hunting land.
Yeah, Rice Lake isn't huge, but it's bigger than like obviously what we have.
And as I said later on, he did end up he got moved to an Iowa prison. I don't remember how much after he got moved to an Iowa prison, but it ultimately came down to shortly after Cha Vang was murdered and stuffed in some trees. Unrelated case. It was like
get this fucker
shortly
out of the
after
state.
that, they were like, we need to put him somewhere else.
Oh yeah, because he probably would have gotten also murdered. And high key, I bet somebody thought that was him.
Honestly,
And just saw the last name. It was just like, this fucker did that, and then just...
Honestly,
Yeah.
probably. It would not surprise me one bit.
Just takes one racist person to be like, they all look the same.
Yeah. So, that was our Meteor, Wisconsin hunting massacre.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you feel good about going hunting, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, we're on private land that's not butted up to any public land, so that's good.
Truth. And it's not your, like, hunting there or anything. It's just my
No.
first time hunting there.
Yeah.
So
You'll have fun.
it'll be a lot of fun. So we'll see you guys next week for our next pre-recorded episode
Yeah.
because holidays. And after the holidays, we'll get back onto
Right. So
more of a
probably after
rhythm.
New Year's we'll
Yeah, we are still going to be posting every single week, but some of them might be a little bit pre-recorded, so we might not be able to get back to like any tips or advice or anything like that. But following the new year, we're going to start going with the parts 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3 for some of the
Mhm.
longer cases, and we'll
Just to
see
make
how it
things
goes. We're up
easier.
to 20 followers on Spotify now. So awesome.
Yay.
So we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.